So I wanted to do a quick kind of closing out video on the 2D Platter project. It's been a fun ride. I think it's about run its course. I was actually I have a maker channel, Slack channel at work, and I was talking to my coworkers about when to call a project done. And what were the exact words to bring up? Tweeted it earlier, so I'm just going to go to my tweets because I forget the exact phrasing of the quote. It goes, "Great works are never finished, but merely abandoned." And we got to talking and realized some things. We talked about SMART goals. So I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's basically that you set goals that are obtainable and measurable and some other metrics. And I kind of just set out to build a 2D plotter. And it's like, what does that actually mean? And I found some of my inspirations in the 3D printer that I own, and that has a whole company's backing and company of engineers and things like that. And I think I set the bar too high, and I wandered a little bit, and so I think there's some learnings in there in terms of kind of being focused in the journey. So I think I just want to do a quick kind of walk through summarizing the project and then kind of the learnings that I took away, which were super awesome, and next steps. So switch over to screen sharing. It all kind of started 10 years ago. So you can find this in my portfolio, travisbaumgartner.com. Made various attempts at GitHub repos on different aspects of 2D plotting. I think perhaps the real goal was just to learn about 2D plotting, which I'd like to believe that I've done. First project or attempt that I ever did was with some 3D printed parts from work. I did this about 10 years ago at this point, maybe closer to 8 years ago, and managed to get as far as this little line that you see under there, and then gave up, had some rubber bands and just a crude assembly of things. And I made a second attempt where I think this is where I realized just kind of the scope of the complexity of things. Had like a rusty nail here with like glue inside, and realized that things don't really move nicely along tracks like this. And this was about as far as I guess this second iteration got. And then in the third iteration, decided to focus more on just using pre-existing hardware and working on the code myself. So this was a Python script for taking images and converting them to things that you could laser cut. This kind of pattern here was actually part of my friend. There's a photo of my friend and a t-shirt, and he had a striped t-shirt, and you can kind of see that here. So that was the third iteration, or fourth, or however you want to count. I made many attempts here. I think in this final go, I really learned all that I wanted to learn about how 2D plotters work. So kind of leading up to, or setting the base for this last attempt, you could say, was building a little attachment for my 3D printer that converted it into 2D plotter by basically taking G-code instructions and from a Python script I wrote and outputting them. So you can see here a pen attachment. And so this initial just kind of thing was to see if I could draw a square or a rectangle with an X through it. You can see that going, and then wanted to see if I could draw the alphabet. And so you can kind of see that roughly here. A is off the screen, but B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And yeah, so this was, I was feeling pretty confident, and I figured I really wanted to make a really solid go at building a 2D plotter. So I'm going to readjust the goals of this video and just say that we're going to kind of walk through and the things I learned. And so this, I wanted to do a Twitch stream. I wanted to get into educational making. And so that was kind of, I wanted to stream regularly. I wanted to build for an audience. I wanted to see what Twitch and YouTube and things are all about. And so started streaming, and I made this CAD model with some parts that I had. And this is just the beginning, slowly kind of stepping through adding new features and talking to different people and testing out different parts and things like that. If we continue on ahead past some other projects, got everything up and modeled at least for an initial pass and printed all those things out and slowly started assembling them. I wanted to do so one interesting bit here is that I used to work as a mechanical engineering intern many years ago, and 8020 is a company that makes these kind of metal rods here. They're called T-frames, and I'd never actually ordered one myself, and I wanted to order something myself just to see that, hey, that I could put in a purchase order to get something machined and sent to me. And so they came in the mail, and then I 3D printed parts, and I ordered some screws off of another website, and slowly started putting things together. Got to learn how to put belts and attach those to motors and move things. Got to learn along the way about 3D printing properties, and the way you print and how you print kind of improves or changes the qualities of 3D printing. So that was a fun little lesson. Had a lovely moment where I actually started to get motion in the process, which was really cool to see things kind of how you use belts to do linear motion with circular motors, or rotating motors, I should say. And then started to see how things kind of came together. So how like the various aspects of a 2D plotter or a 3D printer kind of come together. So like switches and motors and Arduino and all that cool stuff. See, is it this moment? I believe it was this moment. Oh no, one more. This video. So this is a fun hurrah. This was me actually having the motion kind of going in X and Y directions without catching too much. But I had this issue. Oh man, where did I post that video? Might have been a little bit further back. Basically, one of the things that I ran into is that 3D printed parts for high precision is a little bit of a struggle. You can kind of see it in this video where the bit that's off screen actually kind of gets stuck, and you can see that the metal rods are actually bending and the back piece is not moving. And so motion, just kind of a struggle. And so that's kind of one of the things that I don't feel like dealing with. Also, cable management. I realized that continuing on with the project would be a lot of kind of just frustrating headbanging work, and not really. There's no learning opportunities, and I think that's why I'm most deterred. I don't think there's anything left to learn, and I think that's kind of what drives me. I was talking to a lot of fellow makers, and I think it's about the learning and things like that. It's the hardest projects that never get finished. I wrote some awesome code. So I wrote the code to generate that alphabet that you saw from A to Z. This is a bunch of Python code that outputs G code, takes in a input message that you write and outputs to the screen. So that was really cool. Made a little paint program where you could draw rectangles in a Python program powered by Pygame, and it would output kind of instructions that we could send off to the plotter. Figured out how to get Python talking to Arduino, which was really cool, and I'm definitely going to use that in future projects. I would much rather interface with an Arduino with Python code than with C++ code whenever possible. Learned a ton about 3D printing, which was really cool. So yeah, so those are the things I learned. It's quite the project. If I wanted to turn this into a company, I'd probably keep going. But I've satisfied my learning. If I really wanted a good 2D plotter, I can really just hook up my 3D printer here and kind of just use it like that. That little adapter is actually still on my printer, so if any time I want to do stuff like this, I can just use my 3D printer. And the 3D printer has better motors and better motion and all that good stuff. So at some point, I think there's this struggle of making that you rely on. Makers like to reinvent the wheel, and I don't think that's always the best. For learning, yes, but if you want to if you want to actually build something you can use. And I think this was more about a learning journey. And I think maybe that's important to define at the beginning. Do you actually want to build something, or do you want to learn about something? And I think there's kind of two separate ways you tackle the problem depending on whether you're learning or you're building to use something. And I think this project was about learning, because I really could have just gone on the internet and purchased a 2D plotter where I could have stripped out, I think for like $150, and then I could have stripped out all the code and really focus on the code, which is, I think, is what is maybe I was most interested in. If I wanted to make this a more permanent like tool in my workshop. But it was more about the learning. And so yeah, so I think I scoped this project as being both learning and having a thing at the end. And that was probably a bit too ambitious because I started reinventing the wheel in many different ways. And so I think there's some lessons in that, takeaways, things to reflect on. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I think I'm going to scrap the project. It's been fun, but it's stressing me out. And I think if I'm like making for like to launch a startup, that's one thing. But if I'm making just for fun, I don't think it should be stressful. And I'm slowly coming to realize that at some point you have to make for fun. If you don't want to burn out and you don't want to do it for a living, making needs to be fun. And learned as much as I want to learn. I can now share that wisdom with others. And hopefully if you've learned something along the way. As far as next steps, I'm reassessing what I want to do with the stream, the Twitch stream and the YouTube channel. I'm starting to explore new things. I think that's kind of the fun of all of this, is you can really choose your own adventure. And I tried this out for about 2 months, and as far as the Twitch stream, I don't think it worked well. As far as a YouTube series, I don't think it worked well either. I'm starting to experiment with some new things which seem to be gaining traction. And I think I really want to explore the like making for fun kind of aspect of things. And so I look at streamers like Michael Reeves and Mark Rober, who just kind of have fun with it. And I think there's something about when you have fun with it, it shifts the stress and the frustration with things. So yeah, so that's my long rambling conclusion for this project. If you have any thoughts and comments, feel free to throw them down below. If you want to join me live on Twitch, you can find a link for that as well. Would like to hear your input on how I can take the direction of the stream, so would appreciate your feedback. So I think that's all. This will be the final recording for the 2D plotter project. Yeah, so we'll see where this goes next. Thanks for joining me. Till next time.